Welcome to this lecture where I'll be teaching about how to handle difficult questions. Before I get to the scenarios, let's just look at 4 points that you can consider in dealing with a difficult question. Number 1 is to acknowledge the person that's asking you the question, to acknowledge the concern, and not to brush off the concern. So as an example, if someone asks you a question, don't say like, "No, don't worry about that, we've covered it." That's brushing it off. Acknowledge the concern, watch your body gestures, watch your eye contact. Number 2, remember it's okay to say if you don't know the answer. So say, "I don't know the answer. I'll go and find out for you." It's your credibility, your integrity at risk here. So don't make up facts if you don't know the answer. And remember to get back to the person within 2 to 3 days of the question being asked. Number 3 is to rephrase the question if it's unclear. If you don't understand, don't be one of those presenters that go onto a tangent and you never answer the question. And eventually the person says, "I'm sorry, that's not exactly what I asked." Because then that makes you look silly in front of everyone. So if you don't understand the question, just rephrase it, make sure that you got the question and then respond to it. And finally, number 4, always remember to be the last person to speak. As a presenter, you are leading on the stage. You start the presentation, and regardless of what happens in the conversation in the Q&A, you need to bring the conversation back so that your voice is the last voice that the audience hears as you wrap up the presentation. So now let's look at all those scenarios. I've got 5 for you, and let's see what you'll do in these particular scenarios to handling a difficult question. Scenario number 1. Someone in your audience asks you a hypothetical question. I would like you to consider how would you respond to a person that asks you a hypothetical question. So what is a hypothetical question? Think of how you get asked these questions in interviews. So someone would say, hypothetically, what would you do in this scenario? Now, how you'd respond to a question in an interview is very similar to how you'd respond to a question from the audience in this manner. So I'd ask you to do, number 1, clarify the situation. So what are those conditions in which the hypothetical scenario is included? So you would answer the question and it sounds something like this. You would like me to respond to this in the following situation. You have 5 members, there is a limited budget, and on top of that, there are only 1 direct report to assist with the project. Let's just assume that that is the scenario. What I then ask you to do is number 2, add your own conditions to that existing scenario. So you'd say something like, in addition to that, I'm also assuming that the people on the team have been trained on XYZ. And then, given the existing condition, your own assumptions, you then answer the question. Scenario number 2. Let's assume that you are at a client's business meeting and you are proposing a deal. And the client asks you a question that you're not able to answer because someone in another department at your company is the only person that can respond to that. What do you do and how do you respond? So what I don't want you to do is to put someone else in another department of your company under risk by saying something like, "Yeah, sure, our legal department will be able to get back to you in 3 days." And they won't be able to, because that puts them under pressure. Or you say something like, "Yeah, I'm sure our finance team can give you that discount rate." And maybe they're not able to give you that discount rate to the client. So again, it's brand management at risk. What I would prefer that you do is to remove yourself from the meeting and make a phone call to the relevant department manager outside of the meeting and give them the scenario and ask them, do you approve of this? Am I able to give them the discount? Are you able to deliver this within 3 days? And then you get your response. Then you come back to the meeting and you tell them. But what if you can't get a hold of the person because they're in a meeting at the time? Then you come back to the meeting and then you say to the person or your client, "I have tried a few people. Just give me the rest of the afternoon." Or you basically buy some time, whether it's the afternoon, a day, and in that time you get back to the person after having the discussion with the relevant manager. Let's look at scenario number 3. You have 3 more minutes left for a Q&A session, and you have time for one more question. Someone picks up their hand and says, I have a question, and it comes in 3 parts. So basically they have 3 questions. So what would you do in this scenario? Now remember again that the rest of your audience is looking at you. So you can't be, okay, of your 3 questions, which one is most important? Only ask me that question. Again, it's your credibility and it's your professional presence. So here's what I would ask you to do. You need to time manage this person and literally look at your watch and you say to them, I only have time for 1 question. Quickly, what is your question number 1? Okay, great. Question number 2? And question number 3? So you basically time manage them and you get them to say their questions as quickly as possible. Then in your response, you gauge the depth of your answer that you can give. And you could respond as follows. Okay, question number 1 is a high level. Yes, it can be done, but perhaps speak to me afterwards and I'll give you a little bit more details. And then question number 2, and you answer quickly or you give a little bit of a high level answer. And then you respond to question 3. And if there's anything that you can't give the detail on at that time, just invite the person to come and speak to you afterwards. And by doing it in that way, you've honored 2 things. Number 1, you've honored the person because you allowed them the privilege of asking the question without shutting them down and without everyone else looking at you like you're a bad person. And number 2, you've honored the rest of the group because remember you only had 3 more minutes left, and if you had gone over that timing, then you're disrespecting the time that everyone else has dedicated to your presentation. That concludes that scenario. Let's look at scenario number 4. An audience member asks you a question that requires a detailed response. How would you respond to this question in a way that is logical and simple to understand? And my simple suggestion is to frame your answer by saying as follows. It is a little bit of a detailed question, so I'm going to frame it as follows in a 3-step approach. First, you would do the following. Second, you would do the following. And third, you would do the following. Whatever logical sequence makes sense for you, that's what you would use to frame your answer. But don't be one of those people that says, well, to respond, I would suggest that you do the following, and also, and don't forget to. Because the moment you put that and also, and the rest of the audience is listening to you and they're wondering, how many more do you have? And if you do it that way, you tend to confuse your audience. So remember to frame your response. Let's look at the last scenario in this lecture series. Scenario number 5. You receive a question from an audience member who appears to be upset and irate at what you have said. How do you respond to this person and still maintain your composure and professionalism? You maintain your composure by remembering that you are the leader on the stage. If you're going to be also irate and irritable, then the rest of the audience will pick up on your energy. Energy is very much transferable. So you want to stay calm and composed, keep your eye contact with the person, and remember what I said earlier about group solidarity, is when you treat one person with respect, you're treating everyone with respect. So I would ask that you stay calm with the person by asking them, what exactly is it that you are upset about? Or you could say something like, I see that there is an underlying concern. How can I clarify this for you? And so by saying it in that manner, you're calming that person down and you're showing everyone else that you are still confident in handling a difficult and irate person. And then depending on what they are saying, you go back to my earlier technique of either dealing with a factual question with facts or an opinionated question with your own facts to back up what you are saying. And that concludes all the scenarios in this section. I hope you have as many tools as you need now to handle any difficult question that the audience can throw at you. So let's conclude. I have a quick activity for you that joins all of these lectures together, and there's a resource attached to it. Let's get into it, and you can entrench all the learnings from this section.